A small silver coin, no bigger than your thumbnail, sat buried in the dirt of the ancient world for nearly 2,000 years. It doesn't mention Jesus, it doesn't show his face, and yet historians point to coins exactly like this one, alongside a small collection of other archaeological finds, as some of the strongest physical evidence that the world of the Gospels was real, down to the smallest political detail. What is this coin? Why does it matter? And what other evidence backs it up? To answer that, you have to go back to a single moment in the Gospel of Mark. Religious leaders confront Jesus in the temple courts, trying to trap him with a question about taxes. Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? It's a setup. If Jesus says yes, he alienates a Jewish population furious about Roman taxation. If he says no, he's committing treason against Rome in public, in front of witnesses. Jesus asks for a coin. Someone hands him a denarius. He looks at it and asks a simple question. Whose image is this, and whose inscription? They answer, Caesar's. And Jesus responds with the line that's echoed for 2,000 years. Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. It's a brilliant answer. But there's something easy to miss buried inside this exchange. The coin itself. Archaeologists and numismatists, researchers who study historical coins, have recovered thousands of Roman denarii from this exact period, and many of them match the description implied in this story with remarkable precision. During the reign of Emperor Tiberius, who ruled from 14 to 37 AD, the standard silver denarius in circulation featured his portrait on one side. Not a symbolic image, not an abstract design. His actual face, in profile, with a laurel wreath, exactly the kind of image that would have provoked the question Jesus asked. Why does that detail matter? Because for observant Jews in 1st century Judea, this coin was more than currency. It was a walking violation of their own religious law. The second commandment prohibits graven images, and carrying around a coin stamped with the face of a man who claimed to be the son of a god, because that's literally what the inscription said, created constant low-grade tension. Historian Paul Barnett, who has written extensively on the historical context of the New Testament, has noted that Roman coinage functioned as a kind of daily propaganda. Every transaction was a small reminder of who held power. The coin wasn't just money, it was a message. The specific denarius most historians associate with this passage bears the inscription Ti Caesar Divi Aviu F Aviu STVS, an abbreviated Latin phrase that translates roughly to Tiberius Caesar, son of the divine Augustus. On the reverse side, a seated female figure, likely representing Pax, the goddess of peace, or possibly Tiberius's own mother, Livia, depicted in a pose associated with divine favor. This coin type has become so closely associated with the biblical episode that among collectors and historians it's sometimes referred to informally as the tribute penny. Numismatist David Hendon, whose catalogue of ancient Judean coinage is considered one of the standard references in the field, has documented how these Tiberian denarii circulated widely throughout the eastern provinces of the empire, including Judea, during exactly the years the Gospels describe. His research shows a consistent pattern. This wasn't a rare or unusual coin someone might have gotten wrong from a distance. It was the everyday currency of the region. Archaeologist and biblical historian Jody Magnus, whose work on 1st century Judea has been widely cited in academic circles, has pointed out that coin finds from this period are among the most reliable dating tools archaeologists have. Unlike pottery or architecture, which can be harder to date precisely, coins were minted with specific years and specific rulers, giving researchers an almost exact timestamp for the layers of soil they're found in. When these Tiberian denarii turn up in excavations across Judea and Galilee, they confirm something crucial. The exact currency described in the Gospel account wasn't invented by later writers unfamiliar with the period. It was the actual coin circulating in that region, under that emperor, during the years the Gospels claim these events took place. But the coin doesn't stand alone. It's part of a wider body of physical evidence that repeatedly lines up with the world the Gospels describe. Consider the smaller bronze coins known as lepta, minted locally under the Roman-appointed governors of Judea, including Pontius Pilate himself during his time in office. Archaeologists have recovered large numbers of these coins in excavations throughout Jerusalem, including near the Temple Mount. These are almost certainly the type of coin referenced in the story of the widow's offering, where Jesus watches a poor woman give 2 small copper coins at the temple treasury. The physical coins match the value, size, and period described in that account with striking precision. Then there's the discovery that changed how historians talk about Pontius Pilate altogether. For a long stretch of the 20th century, some scholars questioned whether Pilate, described in the Gospels as the Roman governor who authorized Jesus' execution, was accurately portrayed, or whether his title and role had been exaggerated by later writers. That question was largely settled in 1961, when archaeologists excavating the Roman theater at Caesarea Maritima uncovered a limestone block bearing a Latin inscription. It read, in part, Pontius Pilatus, prefect of Judea. Known today as the Pilate Stone, it remains the only known archaeological artifact that names Pilate directly and confirms both his existence and his official title, exactly as the Gospels describe it. Historian and New Testament scholar Craig Evans has argued that these kinds of small, specific details, references to coins, taxes, local officials, and administrative structures, are exactly the sort of thing a forger or a later editor working from second-hand knowledge would be most likely to get wrong. Yet time and again, archaeology has confirmed rather than contradicted these details. Beyond the physical artifacts, there's also the matter of independent written sources outside the Bible entirely. Roman historian Tacitus, writing around 116 AD in his work known as the Annals, references Christus, stating that he was executed under Pontius Pilate during the reign of Tiberius. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus, writing in the late 1st century, includes a brief but historically significant reference to Jesus in his work Antiquities of the Jews. While portions of that passage have been debated among scholars for later Christian editing, most historians agree that a core reference to Jesus as a historical figure, executed under Pilate, was part of Josephus's original text. Neither Tacitus nor Josephus were sympathetic to the early Christian movement. Both were writing from outside perspectives with no religious motivation to affirm these events. That makes their independent corroboration especially significant to historians evaluating this period. So, why should any of this matter to you? Because it's easy to read the Gospels as distant, symbolic, almost mythic stories detached from any verifiable historical setting, but moments like this pull the narrative back down into the dust and coinage of the real ancient world. Jesus wasn't teaching in an abstract, timeless void. He was standing in a real temple courtyard, holding a real coin, minted by a real emperor, responding to a real and dangerous political trap laid by real religious leaders who had genuine reasons to fear both Rome and public opinion. This also reframes what Jesus' answer actually meant. Give back to Caesar what is Caesar's wasn't a simple statement of political neutrality. Given what that coin represented, a Roman claim to divine authority stamped directly onto currency Jewish people were forced to use, Jesus' answer carried an edge. He wasn't just avoiding a trap. He was drawing a line between the authority of an empire that claimed divinity for its rulers and the authority of God without ever saying a word that could be used against him in a Roman court. That's not a small rhetorical trick. That's someone who understood exactly what was in his hand and exactly what it meant to the people watching him. Coins like this one continue to surface in archaeological digs throughout Israel, sometimes in temple excavations, sometimes in domestic sites, sometimes in hoards buried during periods of unrest. Each one is a tiny, physical confirmation that the political and economic backdrop of the Gospels wasn't invented after the fact. It was lived in, argued about, and carried in pockets by the very people these stories describe. And, when you place the coin beside the Pilate Stone, beside the lepta from the temple treasury, beside the independent accounts of Tacitus and Josephus, a pattern emerges that's difficult to dismiss as coincidence. There's something worth sitting with in that. We tend to separate history and faith into different categories, as if believing something requires ignoring the physical record, or as if the physical record automatically undermines belief. But this coin doesn't do either of those things. It simply confirms that the world the Gospels describe, the taxes, the tension, the emperor's face staring up from a piece of silver, was real. What you do with the story that unfolds inside that world is a different question entirely. But the world itself, the coin, the courtyard, the crowd waiting to see how Jesus would answer, that part isn't in dispute. A small silver coin, no bigger than your thumbnail, sat buried in the dirt of the ancient world for nearly 2,000 years. And when it was finally pulled back into the light, alongside a stone inscription, a handful of copper coins, and the writings of 2 Roman historians who had no reason to help the Christian story along, it didn't just confirm a piece of Roman history. It confirmed that the ground beneath one of the most famous confrontations in the Gospels was as real and as solid as the coin itself. Thank you for watching. Let's continue the conversation in the comments section. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell. Till next time.